All right, so I'm going to introduce our speaker tonight, Wynne Whyman. Her day job is Director of Communications and Advocacy for the Center for Hearing Access, which is a national nonprofit advocacy and education initiative. And I want to say that her knowledge in that has really helped Boulder County Audubon to understand hearing access and use what the church has and help people to hear our programs better. So thank you, Wynne, for that. Wynne was self-taught as a child for butterflies, and she's been for a decade or so counting butterflies for Boulder County Parks and Open Space. She's running the Gilpin County butterfly counts for the North American Butterfly Association. And one thing I've noticed, I've had a chance to spend a few field days with Wynne, and she's very patient and detailed and takes great photos. And when we go to the field together, I'm looking at birds more and she's looking at butterflies more, but then we share that information. And I've noticed that there are a number of things we look at to identify birds that you can use to identify butterflies, like size, shape, colors, patterns, how they fly, the habitat they're in, the geographical range, all of those kinds of things. So if you have observation skills in one of those areas, it's going to somewhat carry over to the other one. Now, butterflies are smaller and they don't sing, but but we can use a lot of those same skills. So it's great to have Wynne be here, and I'd like to introduce Wynne Whyman for tonight's talk.
So thanks, and good to be here. Sound check. Did I get the microphone in a good place? Thank you for the feedback, nodding. And also, when I get into this, the first part of any presentation is to make sure about communication access. So whether it's this kind of a presentation or another or in the doctor's office, if you don't have good communication, why bother? So you first have to establish that. So thanks to Sandra and the Zoom people, we have it. Captions, I'm assuming, are working online. And then we have a question there, and then we have Michael helping. So thank you for that. A bit louder, okay? So I could project a little bit, and maybe Michael could help me. I could get my camp director voice going and try to project and try to, because what I hear is radically different than what everybody else hears. So thank you. I just need a monitor for that. So I've had a hearing loss since a preschooler. So if you look at this graph, I tease that people are finally catching up with me with the hearing loss. Not that hearing loss is caused by old age, but there is a strong correlation there with that. And people don't realize how much there is and just say, oh, I can't hear so well. But it's really difficult because our hearing aids, and for me, I have a hearing aid and a cochlear implant, they work about 8 feet. It's a little tiny microphone. So in places like this, when we get to the Q&A, I'm probably going to be adding on what some people are using here in the audience. And that is that this is required under the American with Disabilities Act, that where there is a public accommodation, that you have hearing assistants. And they're really fascinating technology because it takes whatever is going through the loudspeaker and it puts it straight into our ears. And we can get it any volume we want. And more important, it's the clarity, that clarity comes straight to our ears and we don't have the background noise with it. And so this is part of, I usually would be using on the right, but technical difficulties tonight. When we get to Q&A, I'm going to put on a headphones so that I can hear the Zoom, I can hear the questions. You all already have microphones here. You already have wonderful people that say, talking to the microphone, so that everybody can hear on Zoom. And everybody with hearing loss can also hear with that. So I think where systems go, Are we good on volume now? A little bit louder, and I think Michael is helping with some of that. So now we have communication access. A little bit of my story, as Bev said, self-taught. And just out of coincidence, I am going through thousands of papers. It's a paper reduction act in my life. And I found my old butterfly folder from when I was a kid. And in there, I totally forgot about. So my first one, you can't read it. But that first one is 1982. I found a black swallowtail caterpillar and I watched it spin a chrysalis and then I watched it hatch. It took an hour and a half to dry its wings. And I'm like, oh my, I didn't even remember writing it. And to find that is like, oh, how cool. And then in that folder, the second one is the newspaper article for when they made the Colorado hair streak the state insect. And it's a story, and this is a picture of the kids down at the state legislative session advocating to make that the insect. I'm like, I have it. That's cool. Then the third pictures are, the top one is my field guide. So remember, this is before the internet, before I found anybody around, and I was doing this on my own. So the top picture is the eastern United States butterflies. And I'm like, that's close enough. So I kind of learned the families, but I got some of the names kind of off. And then the bottom is the big mega book that's scary. There's so many butterflies in there to try to figure it out. But, you know, I had enough there. Right. And then fourth picture is the camera, which does not take good pictures. And then I've graduated. The bottom picture is what I have now. It's an all-in-one camera. It's about 10 years old, which means it's not separate lenses, but it's more lightweight. And I really like it for out in the field. And then as Bev said, and people here in the audience and online, been helping out with Boulder County with counting them. And it was delighted to move back here. I'm a native Boulder person, but about 16 years ago, I came back in the area and hooked up with some wonderful people and joining with that. So tonight we're going to look a little bit with what's the similarities, and I have technical adjustment. Okay. Okay, good. So how's that? Yeah, that's sounding better to me. Thank you. Awesome. Sounding better for me. Okay. So we're first I'm gonna go through some similarities, kind of building what Bev said. It's a lot of observation, but there's some other things in the field. And then where are we going to find these butterflies? Where you can look for them, where they might be, and some similarities. Getting some framework, because I'm an educator by heart, looking at the families, and then lower altitude butterflies, and then some common questions, because we need a break. That's like a lot for our brain to learn. Take a break, learn a little bit more about higher altitude photography, and then what we can do to help the butterflies. So some similarities there. It's lifelong learning. So I've done it. I've self-taught. And then you have winter freeze. It's like, now what was that butterfly I finally learned last summer? And then you remember it again. And then next year you do it. But it's a treasure hunt going out. And there's also with it some what I consider, the identification. And then you have the birders have this, and the butterflyers, I think, of, do you group the similar ones together, or do you split it based on some of the biology or the characteristics of the genuses or whatever? And so you have that in both fields with how do you name it? Are they a group or are they individual species with that? And then the fun of The email came through a few weeks ago about updating the website, and the names have changed for some of the butterflies. And which list are we going to be doing? And the bird names change as well. So it's fun to see what is similar and what's kind of different with that. So one of the things that's similar in with the butterflies like the birds are that there are seasons with that. So some butterflies we're going to see all season, all summer long, like the cabbage in just a minute. And then other ones are going to only come out late summer, or they're only going to show up in the springtime. And in the back of this wonderful book is this graph. This is just a scan of it that show when each species comes out in the range, as well as altitude. They're going to come out earlier in the summer, lower, and then as you go up higher, they'll come out later for some of the species that might be at different altitudes with that. So that's normal. As I don't know about the birds because I'm a baby birder. With the butterflies, this is a wacky year for butterflies. So it's a really, really warm spring and a really, really warm winter. So our first sightings of butterflies this year was in February, which was just weird. And these are the ones that Dan found here in Boulder County. And some of them make sense. So these all have the rough edges, and they have a chemical in them like antifreeze where they hibernate over winter as adults. So on a warm day, they can come out and then they can go back into that semi-hibernation stage. So it makes sense for the mourning cloak, the milberts, and the hoary to come out. Cabbage, well, they're just plentiful. So just interesting that they came out. Also ranges. So either by book with the map is the quote older way. Newer way, you can go online and you can see where people are seeing these. And so you can see for this two-banded checkered skipper, it's a western butterfly and where you might be seeing it. So if you're in New Mexico and you think you identified it, it's like, nope, need to look for another species with that. So some similarities with that. And then the survival rates on BCNA, I remember a few years ago because there were some birds falling out of a nest and not surviving real well, and somebody saying, we need to do something. And somebody else piped in, it's a rough world out there for the birds, that the birds have a hard survival rate that first year, I've learned. Butterflies also have a hard survival rate to making it all the way from egg, all the way through the 4 stages into a butterfly. So when I found this chrysalis on my front porch, and I have an ash tree, so it's a swallowtail chrysalis. I'm like, I got to protect it. So I built this little box to protect the chrysalis so I wouldn't bang it in the wintertime. And I was told it's probably the bugs are going to get it. And sure enough, the bugs did get it. But, I tried to protect it just a little bit. So nationally, like birds of what I've read, bird species are declining. Insect species are declining, of which butterflies are also declining. So a recent study showed overall a 22% decline in 20 years, and then they quantified it by the type of species. So some butterflies are declining faster than others, and a little bit of hope that there are some species that have a little bit of increase, and trying to figure out how can we support. A lot is with habitat going on with that. So what's happening here in Boulder County? So thanks to Jan, who's here in the audience. She and Venice put together our report for Boulder County. And it's hard with butterflies because you can't just look at one species because they go up and down over each year. But if you look at a big picture and you kind of look at a trend, that gives you a better idea. And so they have a wonderful metric that if we go out looking for butterflies for that research hour, how many are we counting? How many individuals? And so you can see that that's gradually declining. And what a lot of our emails are sadly saying is, I saw the butterflies and I saw the different species, but it's not the same numbers that we've seen before, that it's declining with some of that. So I feel it's really important that we are seeing what's there, we're counting what's there, we're trying to figure out what is happening with that. And then we also will get on the towards the end with some of our counts of we all, whether you're doing birding or butterflying, we all tally it. And very few people like doing all the tallies. It's not the most fun to do, but it's part of the game. So I know this is not readable, but it's the spreadsheet that I've put together for the Gilpin count. So we can go out and we can kind of see what we've seen before, helps us identify, and then we can also be looking at some of those trends with that. So I do have a little hope that some of you will come over to the darker side and that your birder's gone bad, according to Pyle, about that you're into dragonflies or insects or butterflies. And while you're out, because one time I went with Bev and another person, we did birding in the morning while it was really cold. It warmed up, and then we did butterflying. So you can do it all in the same day, some of the same habitats with that. So where can you find these lovely critters? So first is to differentiate between what's a moth and what's a butterfly. These are rules of thumb. They're not hard and fast, but generally that there's going to be a club antenna. I mean, it's kind of like a fist, like a golf club, but not all of them. Some of them are more like a hook. Generally, they're going to be more colorful, and it's smaller. There's more moths out there than there are butterflies. But generally, moths are at night, butterflies are in the day. This one happens to be out in the daytime. They fly different, so we can look at it that way. So when to look needs to be warm. So some of the birders, they're up and they're putting on their hat and mittens. Butterflies won't be flying then. So about 60 degrees for that. A sunny day, little to perfect conditions, basically, to go out and to be looking for them. So when you go out, where might you find some of these? And so they looking for nutrients. And where can they find nutrients? Part of it is manure. So this first picture is a nice apple roads and a butterfly landed on it and getting some nutrients from that. The second one is unusual. This pine species lives up in the top of the trees. It comes out late summer. And that's where they live, and they come down when they become a butterfly and come down and nectar during the day in August. But very few butterflies are with the pine trees. But many butterflies love the mud and puddling. There's a lot of nutrients in the soils and a lot of moisture with that. And they're just delightful to be seen with the puddling there. So some other places are going to be some butterflies, like the ones that came out that have that antifreeze. They tend to like the sap. So if you find some kind of a tree that has some sap oozing, those rough-edged brushfoot might be there with the sap with it. So there's a mourning cloak in there and a comma. Hard to see them. And then you can look on the host plants. And with the host plants, you might find the eggs, you might find the caterpillar, you might find a female laying eggs with that. And then this next one is with the grasses, the skippers, the grass skippers. That's part of their habitat. But most butterflies are really going to be after that pollen with it. And then there's always the exception to the rule, just like any good nature identification. Cemeteries are really, they have a lot of, if they're unkept and up in Idaho Springs, the cemetery is more wild and a lot of native plants there. But people had left plastic flowers, and sure enough, there's a butterfly landing on the flower. The next one is the pollen, and that's the pine white that has come out of the pine trees, coming down to nectar during the day, and then we'll go back up at night into the pine trees. And then the last one is the Colton Trailhead, if you're familiar. That's one language. Southeast Buffer is the old language. New one is the Carlson Lestoka. I can almost get that out of my memory quickly. Some butterflies, the males patrol looking for females up on the hilltops so that they can keep lookout for where the females are, and you can then look and find both of them, hopefully together with that. So I'm going to, these first 8-ish slides is looking at starting to identify. So I'm assuming you know one butterfly, and we're going to build around that with it. But this is not going to be death by PowerPoint, because there's a lot of butterflies around here. So if you look at North America, there's over 1,000 butterflies, 290-ish here in Colorado. We're really fortunate in Boulder County to have 200. And on the open space, we have found 102 of them. So there's no way I can cover 102 butterflies and you to leave tonight and feel good that you could do something. So that's why I'm narrowing it down to something really simple. And I want to give you a framework, and then you can build on that as you go on. And for some of you, I know you are advanced, and it will be a refresher. And then later, if you want to add anything, I welcome that. So this is the one I could almost guarantee everybody knows it. So it's the cabbage white butterfly. I stopped today at Pella Crossing just to see what was out. And within 10 feet of my car, there was a cabbage white butterfly. It's one of the first ones that come out. It's one of the last ones in the season. It's very, very common. It's very plain. It has very little marking on it, just a little bit on the tips. And then the male will have 1 dot. The female will have 2 dots with it. And I'm going to be building around this common butterfly and building with that. So if you find a butterfly that's white, but it has more markings and it's at lower altitude, it could be a checkered white with it. And it makes sense for once. The name makes sense. It's it kind of looked checkerish with it. And then trying to get a little bit of the identification is that it's brown versus another species which is black with it. And so these are ones that are more likely to be at lower altitude. But again, you go up in the foothills and then up in the montane, you can be seeing some of these as well but just building with just basics with it. Checkered is slightly larger than the cabbage with it. So that's our first slide. And then I'm going to build into that. There's 6 families. So these whites are that second family, originally named whites and sulfurs. So that's that second family. The first family that I skipped is the swallowtails. And I'm going to be taking a few butterflies out of each of these families throughout tonight with that and be going into some of the details. So the families, the swallowtails, whites and sulfurs, the gossamer wing. Gossamer means that they're just little, they're light, they're delicate, beautiful butterflies. Metal marks are easy. There's only one species around here, and that's at higher altitudes. Brush-footed, we'll get into that, and the little skippers. And skippers almost look like moths. They got a fat body. So these are the ones I'm going to be covering. I'm not covering all of them for the lower altitudes. I'm just going to hit just a few of them to just try to get a good foundation going with that. So the first ones are the swallowtails, and you've probably seen one of these floating through. They're around at the lower altitude. I was at Chautauqua over the weekend. I saw 3 swallowtails. They went by so fast because they have a big wing, could not see how much yellow was on them. And so this looks, you're going to be doing 2 things for the quick ID of how much yellow on it. So more yellow is going to be the 2-tailed on the left. And on the right, if you look at the, and I have this nifty little pointer in my pocket. If you look at the bars, so you have a black bar, yellow bar, black, yellow, black, those are even. You have about the same amount of yellow and black going through, versus this is more yellow and a smaller black with it. And sometimes you can tell it and sometimes you can't. And that's why it's nice to grab a photo, because then you know that night what you think you saw. So there's my summary with the click. And also that first one is aptly named. The tail literally is the tails down at the bottom. So it does have a tail there, and that has 2 tails, and this one over here has 1. That is if you can find it that's fresh and isn't been beat up or hasn't been hailed on. Then the sulfurs, and the swallowtails are bigger than the cabbage. So these sulfurs are about the same size as a cabbage. And they have, looking at it, it's really easy between these 2 because the orange sulfur is orange. So if you're seeing an orange one, it's probably going to be that orange sulfur. And then if you look at the pictures, you can get some pretty interesting details as far as that spot underneath meaning ventral. The spot, there's a ring around it on the clouded sulfur. And then the orange sulfur has, it's often like, it's almost like a snowman, like a double cell with it. But the color gets you a lot further along in figuring out what it is. Then moving along to the gossamer family with the blues. I chose these because they're at the lower altitude, and these you can kind of, if it's not these, there's kind of the ones you can weed it out. Then it's got to be something else. So the only butterfly that has orange underneath is the Melissa. It has orange on the top and orange on the bottom, or orange on the forewing and orange on the hind wing. Versus the Reichert's or the Reichert's, depending on who you're with, it has a spot. And you can see that spot on both sides, the dorsal and the ventral, or upper and the lower with it. So if you find a butterfly that has orange only on the hind wing, you know it's neither one of these. Boom, done. But you got to see underneath, and that's the fun part, is to try to get a good picture. Many of us know this one, orange, and it's going to be the monarch. And it's larger than that cabbage white. And then I put the 3 species that are similar with there. So you have the monarch, which many of us know, and it's more busy. So you have this line that's uneven. And I don't think, I'm sorry for the Zoomers, I'll try to verbally describe. The line it's both horizontal and vertical on the hind wing. And on the viceroy, it's a straight line that's kind of curved and parallel to its edge. That's the telltale sign of knowing whether it's a monarch, or if you're a kid and you don't know how to pronounce it, it's a viceroy. But when you grow up as an adult, you know it's a viceroy. And then the last one is a queen. There's a lovely time in the fall when the rabbit brush blooms, and those queens come out, and they're just magnificent. They're also large with that. So moving into the brush-footed family, that's this family that we're into now. It was on that slide of them all together. A brushfoot is an interesting name because all insects we know have what? 6 legs. And with the brushfoots, their front 2 legs are not fully developed, and they're like a brush-like, and they don't extend. So it looks like the butterfly really has 4 legs because the 2 front legs are just closed and tight, or they just look like a mini little brush, raggedy brush there. So thanks to the internet, you can get a picture to see they almost look like fangs on this picture here with the monarch, that those are really legs that are not developed with it. And close, it's those front ones close to the head with it. So interesting, that whole family has this characteristic. Then the Aphrodite fritillary it's a very majestic, bright orange, is a good way to identify. But more important is if you can get a picture of the eyes, crazy things, and get the eyes in focus to know what it is, or if you have your birder binoculars and can get a good sighting on it. So most of the fritillaries are going to have the blue-gray eyes. And then in preparation, had somebody review this, and some of the books say that they are lime green eyes, and other books say that they are brown and amber. So the safe way in the slides, I just said they're not blue and gray. And then all the emails can fly after the slideshow when people tell me which one they think I should be putting in the slide here. And then on the lower hind wing, that they are silver. So the fritillary is figuring out if it's just a cream color, if it's just a silver, if it's not silver, looking at the coloring with that, as well as the disc. And the disc is brown, that inner part on the hind wing is a reddish brown with it, which will contrast. Ladies, we're almost, we have just a couple more slides in this beginning batch with the foothills. You might have seen the painted ladies. Sometimes there's a big migration of the painted ladies come through in the fall. It's an orange butterfly, and people say, Wynne, did you see all the monarchs come in? Like, oh, those were painted ladies. But They're observant. It's orange. They're a little bit smaller than a monarch, a little bit bigger than a cabbage. And if you saw the advertisement, I also had an American lady. I didn't quite get the labels in the right place, but the left-hand side is the painted lady. The right-hand side is the American lady. They look a little bit different on top. So that painted lady is busier with the black markings than the American lady. It's more plain. And then underneath is where you can really see that there's 4 dots underneath, or 4 cells for the painted lady, and the American lady has 2 cells. And how do I remember? The American flag has 2 stripes, alternating with that, with the red and white. So that's how I remember to keep them straight. And then the last family for this beginning part in the foothills is the skippers. And you can look at the bodies, they're very fat. They're almost moth-like. Before, when they were figuring out all the families, there's a lot of debate. Is this a moth? Is it a butterfly? Which way is it? And so this family is considered skippers. There's part of them which are the grass skippers, and they look almost like an airplane taking off, as opposed to some of the others which are spread wing, like this common skippers that just flat going out. And this one on the right makes sense. Checkered skipper. It looks checkered. That one's pretty easy. It's going to be pretty common. You can't assume, there's a couple similarities, but that one's really common down here. And then the fun part, and Jean's here in the audience. So Jean taught me this one. So you look at the bars underneath that hind wing, and there's 5 bars of gold for the taxman, for the taxley skipper. And it's just a magnificent gold color, whether it's underneath or up on top with that. So I'm going to take just a pause, because that's a lot of ID. Take a breath, look at some common questions about butterflies, and then we'll look at some higher altitude ones. So identify a common, like, how do you tell if it's a male or a female? And the answer, like any good scientific anything, it depends. So it depends. So for the monarch, there's on the male, there's some little, they're black spots that are on the vein, and that's going to be the male. The female does not have those spots on that hind wing. And if you look at the difference between the wings and the veins, this is a lighter, it's not as dark black vein on the male, and on the female, it is a darker vein with it. So that one, if you get a good picture and it's not too tattered, you can usually tell the differences with it. Another one, so this is a copper butterfly, and this is part of the gossamer, more of the dainty, delicate families in there. Right here in Boulder at the Sawmill Ponds, male and female on the same rabbit brush. And they're similar in color. It depends how old they are. This one has a little bit more on the bottom with some of the coloring than the top, but then you can see up above it's had a hard life. Either bird came along, it got battered, something happened with it. So it sometimes can be difficult to know which sex it is. And then another question, well, what's the smallest one? And what's the largest one? And I had that a little bit in the teaser with the different sizes. So the cabbage is right smack in the middle in my head with the size. And then over on the left, the tiniest one is a little pygmy. It didn't show up in Boulder County until about 8, 10 years ago-ish. Um, Tiny, and it looks like it's a fly. It's like that's a butterfly. It just zips around, and it's hard to see it and then to capture it. So it's a beautiful little tiny butterfly. I'm holding up my pinky, and very, very pretty with that. Largest one is the two-tailed, and that's the first one that I showed there. That's the largest butterfly. So that's over on the other end with it. And I do the size because you can't tell from pictures how big they are. Everything's close up. So that's the small and largest. And then what happens over the winter? So how do they survive? And how long do they live with it? So we'll just go down a little bit more writing on this one. So on average, they live about 2 to 4 weeks with some exceptions. So a morning cloak, like what was seen in February, because they overwinter as a full butterfly, they live about 9, 10 months with that. And then on the other end, our state insect, 5 days. So when they come out, you move fast if you want to go take a look at them. And then how many broods that they have, so 1 to 3. And then an interesting one is the Chris's Arctic. It's 2-year cycle, and it's on even years. And I just got a report up by Netherlands. They just saw their first 2. And so I put that picture in there. That's more of a high altitude. And Aphrodite, the caterpillars overwinter. And then there's the mixture of some of the chemicals to make that antifreeze. So they overwinter as eggs, overwinter as the chrysalises, and some of them are the caterpillars, and some of them are the butterflies. And a lot is not known because it's quite a mystery. So you have to put in that who's the enemy of the birds? Who's the enemy of the butterflies? And that's the birds. So I have one of my tags. If I have on my photographs, I have bird bite. So birds like the butterflies with their abdomen because it's full of nutrients. So as they're grabbing for that abdomen, sometimes they grab the wing, and there's a nice triangular bite out of that wing. And then the right hand one was, I'm like, look at that. I'm like, that bird caught an orange sulfur and was trying to eat it. And so it's blurry, but I had not seen that before. And that was just interesting. It's the life cycle. And what happens with the rain? So the wings are really strong and can help to pulverize the rain. But if it turns into hail, that's when they can get pretty tattered and they're having a hard life with it. So they'll hide under the leaves, under the bark, wherever they can to get the shelter, but it's still tough on them. And now we take a breath and a little bit more building on butterfly identification and a few more common ones. So if you see a white butterfly at higher altitude that's a little bit larger, it could be a Parnassian. And it's a gorgeous butterfly. It has a little bit of red in it. And I did both the upper and the lower, or the dorsal and the ventral, so that you can see the differences. It's much more decorated than that cabbage butterfly. And then on the right, aptly named, it's a marble. It looks like marbling underneath. So if it's really busy and it's a white butterfly, it might be a marble. And there's a couple species with that. This is a little more common. So another sulfur, we had the 2 before. So we had the orange sulfur and the clouded. A Queen Alexandra or Queen A is very common at high altitude. And what's different about them is, and I missed the endpoint, but the spot on it is just white. It doesn't have an outline of it. So that can help to identify what you're seeing, as well as it's like zipping by, it's going to look lime green. And that will give you an indication that it's a Queen Alexander. So building on, we saw the Melissa, which had orange top and bottom, and the Reichert's, that had the spot. This has neither. It has no orange, no spot. And so you can look at what kind of spots they are. And if you start looking at the shape of the spot, it looks like a T-bone steak. So that's a Boyd of all to identify that one. And then there's the ventral side underneath looking at that. Whoops, sorry. I went. So there's the blue. So then, sorry, I missed the transition. My thumb went faster. The Hesperus is a Colorado butterfly at high altitude, and it's going to have some dark interior, as well as underneath is going to be darker. And while the other one was silvered with the Aphrodite, this one is unsilvered. So that's going to give you an indication, is you at low altitude or high altitude? Is it silvered or unsilvered? To try to give you the pieces to it. And then the brown butterflies, already seen it, but just for repetition, the morning cloak comes out in the springtime. Then you won't see it for a while, and then will come out later on in the summer. And the wood nymph has two spots, and this is the only picture I had. That second one is really hard to identify, to photograph. So the eye spot, you have a large one and a smaller one. If they're the same size, it's a different species with it. And then our last little guy, let's see, I think I'm still good. The microphone moved, so I think I'm still good. Western branded skipper. So we don't have any gold for the taxman on this one. And we have a different markings with those and those bars, rectangles, shapes, however you want to describe them on the hind wing. That's best way to identify the skippers is that pattern, as well as that they're on the top side, on the dorsal side, that there is a dark bar going with that. So that's a Western branded skipper for that one. And it's just fun. So we got on the left-hand side puddling, and look at that proboscis just going down and just drinking that water. Just a nice big straw to suck it all up. So a few slides just to say what are the tricks to the photography. This is just a screenshot I have. I try to tag every picture that I keep so that I can go in and say, I need a picture of this and such. And so there is what I have in Lightroom for some of these and how many I have. And so that helps. And so kind of some general rules of, there's two ways to take a picture. You're doing it to put it up on the wall to have a pretty picture, or you're doing to identify. So most of mine are simply to identify. As many pictures on the top and then as the bottom that you can do, versus if it's going to be up on the wall, just like a bird. You want to see the eyes. You want to have a good depth of field. You want to try to get a good composition. With the butterflies, you can crop. And with cropping, you can get a pretty good picture going on. And then the shadows, I put that in because you take the best picture And then you get home and you're so focused on getting that butterfly just right that there's the grass shadow on your butterfly. You don't even see it until you get home. So take a lot and try to just be aware of where the shadows are falling with it. And then this is Richard loves to take photographs of the front on of the eyes. It's all about the head and the eyes. And that's his specialty. And they're just fun pictures to try to take. So, in taking it, you don't want to act like a predator. So, if you're coming up and you're, big and you're taking your camera and the shadow is falling on the butterfly, it's going to fly away. So, if you're really slow, careful of where your shadow is, where the sun is, take a picture, move in closer, take another picture, take 20 more pictures, and then hopefully one of them will be coming out pretty well. Some people go and they just bring a stool and they park themselves and they just wait for the butterflies to come because the little ones can't fly that far. So they're going to circle around and land and circle around and land again pretty close. So you can have a pretty good chance with it. And as you're taking literally those 20, 30 pictures, if you just try centering on different things, different focus, so that you're upping your chances, because they can fly pretty fast with it. So as we're out in the field, we might say, okay, everybody get one? Okay, let's all move closer. And then we move closer and closer and trying to take the pictures. So some people have amazing digital cameras, point and shoot, and they can make some amazing photographs. Some people like that. Some people like to have the telephoto built in. You can I have it it's setting in the digital camera where you can say, focus on everything, make a nice landscape. You can tell the digital. Or I say, just focus there on the center, a single point, because I want that butterfly to be in focus. And to have a good ISO with it, and to get I have an aperture priority, which is going to prioritize that depth, and you're trying to maximize that depth of field so that you can try to get it as much in focus as you can. So just some rules of thumb. And so the last part is what we can do to help with the butterflies, and just enjoy them. And if you're able and interested, to gather some data. So this is too small. I'm happy to share that we can all plant gardens that are good for all pollination. So the bees, the butterflies, the dragonflies, all the pollinators. And there's a lot of good materials out there, from Butterfly Pavilion, from Native Plants, from CSU Extension, and National Wildlife Federation, People and Pollinators. There's just a lot of good stuff out there. And then this legislative session, the practices to support pollinators, not necessarily rules, but guidelines and support about when do you mow on the public lands, like on the highway. So state land, if you mow down the native habitat, when they are doing, a key change in some of their life stages, they're trying to make it so it's more friendly, and so that it can support the vegetation and the habitats and what the butterflies need. And I know there's a couple of experts on that, and they can speak more on it. And then some wonderful books and websites around with it. Museums are around. And then have to do recruitment. It's part of every volunteer adventure. We're doing 2 butterfly counts, part of NABA, National Association of Butterflies. North America Butterfly Association. There's over 400 counts through the country, and we have 2 right here. So one is Jan, and I point there to out-organize up at Calwood. And then Charlie in the back and I co-organize the Gilpin count. And if you want to join us, it's meant to be for amateurs and learning. So pairing up people so we can all go out and enjoy the day and learn together and have fun. And we welcome anybody for that. So the last part is that I have, it's about a 6-minute slideshow of butterflies. And the way that I organized it is that I organized the first part are going to be the swallowtails. The next part, I'm just going to move through the families of the are going to be the gossamer. I skipped the whites because you've seen a lot of them. Then the meadowlark, brush-footed, and then the skippers. So this is where I need to make sure I know where I put all my gadgets. I'm going to switch slideshows and get that going. Here we go. Okay, so we're ready for questions and answers, and I put on my headphones, so hopefully when using the mics, I can understand the question. And we have runners, and you can.
Yes. We can try. Can you hear me with
Thank
this mic?
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Yeah, we'll alternate between questions in the room and questions on Zoom. So let's start with Jan Chu. Karen's handing you a microphone there.
You talked about birds that been observed. Who has seen and what butterflies have you seen since the snow?
So this is Wynne. So
Yeah, since the snow 2 weeks ago, say, what butterflies have you seen? White? Cabbage white? Okay.
and I'll answer it. Chautauqua last weekend, I saw swallowtails and a Wiedemeyer's and some blues.
Wonderful. I saw and
And what have you seen?
I saw woodland skipper a couple days ago, way too early.
Where do you see that?
In my garden at Fraser.
Okay. Nice.
Okay, we have one more question in the room for now, and then we'll go to Zoom.
Well, thank you very much. I was just curious about how climate change has affected the birds in higher altitudes, if you've noticed any. What did I say? Birds? I meant butterflies.
So I can make up an answer for birds, but I think it's similar.
I meant
with-
butterflies.
Yeah, with butterflies. So the hypothesis is that they're moving up higher. And it's also hard with, is it in sync with their host plant coming out at the same time? So there are, with the Garita skipperling, somebody is studying just that species and looking exactly pinpointing the altitude with it. So it's less butterflies and at a higher altitude is what I know. And I welcome, there's a lot of wealth of knowledge in the room if people want to answer. And I know on Zoom, the experts are there too, if you want to jump in. Okay, nobody's wanting to add. Okay, we'll go on.
Okay, we'll go and see if there's any Zoom questions. Sandra, is there anybody on Zoom with a question?
Yes, Laura has a question, but I'm going to ask Venice if she would like to comment since she's addressing the question about butterflies she's seen since the snow. She's one of those experts, I think.
So can I unmute them?
Yes, you are.
Um, you know, we had some really cold temperatures up here during the snow, and it was really hard on the butterflies. And some of the ones that had come out already, of course, didn't make it through the storms. But let's see, on the 24th, I walked my Sherwood transect, and there I found 15 species. This is after the snow. Some of them were low numbers, but I also was the person that found the two Crixus arctics, and they're coming out early. They don't usually show up until June. Not super early, but they are early. And that's what I've noticed this year. Some of the butterflies did come out early, and then because of the late snow and the cold temperatures, it really affected them and was hard on them. So
Thanks for jumping in. And I saw a question over
Yeah, we'll get to that. Sandra, were there any questions on Zoom? And then we'll come back to the room.
Yeah, Laura, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Sure, yeah. I was just curious, how could we get involved with the counts that you mentioned in late June and July? My cat would like to join. But it sounds like a really interesting and fun experience. And so I was just curious, how do we find out more information about that?
So I have a big smile. I'm going yay, yay here. And we just need to get your email connected with us. And Jan is about to go. She's organizing Calwood. So go ahead.
This year we'll have the 43rd annual count at Calwood on July 4, which is a holiday. Great time to be up looking for butterflies. And also we're going to have an overnight July 3 and 4 with activities. I had some flyers to hand out. I don't know where they are. Here. Okay, information here, and I can also send you information if you send me an email. Title at Butterflies. Thank you. Number 2, CHUHOUSE, number 2 at gmail.com.
And then this is when I'll jump in for Gilpin County. We'd love to have you, and we try not to be so close to the Calwood so people can do both. And so we have Golden Gate on June 30th, and then we have Jeffsco Parks. We have a 2-week window. And so we're really flexible with that, and we just need your email. So just love to get connected.
Sandra, did you get Jan's email so that you could put it in the chat?
No, I was not that swift.
Okay. Let me see if she can say that again because I didn't quite get it either. Would you just repeat your email address?
Number 2, CHUHOUSE, number 2 at gmail.com.
So that's 2 Chew House 2. Okay, did you get that, Sandra?
Yes, I did.
At Gmail. All right.
Yeah, so I can put mine. So it's Wynne, WYNNE 4 at Comcast.net. And I'll get you to Charlie's with me and organizing the volunteers. And I'm pointing, he's in the back of the room here.
Okay. We have another question in the room. Karen, did you want to say something?
I have a question. What's the purpose of the knob at the end of the antennae on the butterflies? Do we know? We don't know.
I don't know. I opened the floor up.
Jan, would you comment? Bev's bringing you a...
It's very sensitive, so it can be sensitive to temperature and also chemical surroundings, like nectar or something good, something bad. And as biologists, we don't really answer purpose. We can answer what the observations are.
For the function, yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Jan. Sandra, another one on Zoom.
We had a request to show the slide with the list of resources again. If you can screen share that, people would like to grab a screenshot. Maybe those in the room would like to grab a photograph.
And this program will be posted on Boulder County Audubon's YouTube channel once Sandra is able to get it edited, so you'll have a chance to go back and review anything you didn't get.
And if you email me, I'm happy to email the slide as well. So that makes it easy to click. So I think this is the one you're looking for, Sandra, is that right?
I think this one and maybe the one right before it too.
Okay, so I'll wait here for just a little bit for all that to happen, and then I'll do that one before.
Someone back here have a question.
I had a question about what was some of the evolutionary dynamics of the butterfly with some of the different aspects or parts of the butterfly that we've been talking about?
Love the questions. I open the floor.
Do you have, well, do we have anybody that wants to answer that question? That's could be.
I didn't get that.
Did you hear the question
Mm-mm.
that she asked?
So yeah, the evolution.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of it's a big question.
Good
Okay.
question. Don't know. And maybe another question, or maybe you can answer it. Yes. In the back there, Karen.
There's an interesting book, Insectopolis by Peter Cooper, Kuper, and partway through, can you hear this? Okay, a book called Insectopolis by Peter Cooper. And partway through, he says, 100 million years ago, plants switched to using insects, butterflies, in order to diversify, so that for spreading their pollen, they weren't limited to wind-borne pollen. So he says there was this real, I don't know whether you call it an emergence or proliferation or something, of all these different kinds of plants that are pollinated originally by butterflies, maybe by moths, I don't know. But it's a neat book because it doesn't have page numbers. It just says, go back how many million years to whatever happened with insects.
Wow.
Thanks, Jim. Any more questions on Zoom? And then I think we have another one in the room.
I do not see one, but Zoomers, if you have another question, flag it in the chat and we'll call on you next round.
Okay.
This is regarding Calwood, the 2 days up there over the 4th of July. Does anyone know the elevation at Calwood?
The answer was 7,000 feet. Okay, other questions in the room or on Zoom? Oh, we've got one in the room.
This is just simple. Could you please repeat your email address? I couldn't catch it.
Sure. So it's my first name. So Wynne, WYNNE, the number 4 at Comcast.net. Wynne4 at Comcast.net. And love to have you, love to have questions. And if you want some of these slides just to save you with the links, typing them, happy to do that.
And if anyone missed any of the email addresses, go to Boulder County Audubon, well, boulderaudubon.org, Boulder County Audubon's website, and contact and send an email to that, and then we'll get it to the people that need it. So that's kind of your backup if you didn't quite get someone's email that you wanted.
We have one more question. Oh,
go ahead.
We have one more question here in the back. Did you finish or did I interrupt you?
No, go for it.
I just wondered about the Pawnee montane skipper, because 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, people were trying to stop a big dam. And I don't know whether dams in general are good or bad for butterflies, like the Gross Reservoir enlargement and all that kind of stuff. But back then, people said that the dam would be really bad for the Pawnee montane skipper. And I wondered what happened to it. It was supposedly threatened or endangered.
Yes, so I've participated in that. They have transects set up along the Platte River Valley, and they're monitoring it. And they had as volunteers as well as staff members doing it. And it goes on, I think, every year. I've lost track of it. It's not very public, but I think it's still an active survey to try to monitor what's going on with that.
Okay, we have one more in the room.
I've got a question as well.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
I was wondering, is there a blue Carner butterfly in Colorado? Have you ever heard of
A
the
blue columbine?
Carner, Karner? Because I'm from upstate New York, and we had blue Carner butterflies, and I was involved in a planting lupines to bring their numbers up, and we would count them. And that's as close as I've come to counting butterflies, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, I'm just smiling. So the lupins,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
love those lupins
yeah.
in the wild.
I see them at Chautauqua. I don't know which butterfly it is, but there's a lot of lupine, and they love them.
Yeah. And I don't know about it's what I'm hearing is karma. I don't think that's a Karna. Don't think so.
And Jan's shaking her head, so she's agreeing with you.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, Sandra, I think you had another question on Zoom, and then we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, my question is that having gone with you, Wynne, butterfly looking from time to time, I have been struck by the clues for identification that you get from the movement of the butterflies. And these static photos don't give us any help on that. Are there sources or things that one can look at to sort of get a feel for how they fly? I mean, that's true with birds too, right? We recognize wing flaps and the shape of the flight and so on. So I'm wondering how could somebody learn to use the motion of the butterflies to help them identify them?
Yeah, so that's learning not only what to look for, but how they fly. So like a satyr, I call it like the floppy butterfly. It just kind of goes all over the place. And I'm kind of doing a little dance here. And you just know that. And that's part of what you look for. It's just part of just learning with it. Swallowtails are big, so they have a big wing and they're very majestic as they're just going, and they might glide for a while. And then you have the other ones that I call spastic, and they just go around. Those are going to be like the painted ladies, the American ladies. So it's learning that part as well.
Are there any sources of videos for such things?
Yeah.
I guess you could you could Google it and see, but
Yeah. Good. You summarize. I think that's part of what you were asking. Is there a source? I've never seen a summary. That would be fun to put together.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I want to thank Michael in the back, who's running the tech stuff here at the church, Sandra on Zoom, our Zoom maven, and Wynne Whyman. And thanks everybody for coming.